Hello, I'm Adam Porter and this is my board gaming vlog, and today we're looking at my top 100 games of all time, but we're looking at numbers 80 through to 71. And what we found on the previous list was that some publishers were starting to pull ahead, so we're seeing a bit more of Blue Orange and Rio Grande. Some designers, specifically Rainer Knizia, we were seeing that there were several of his games on the list. In terms of themes, I was enjoying games about anthropomorphic animals getting up to mischief in all sorts of different ways. And in terms of game mechanisms, it was dice games that were particularly pushing ahead. There were more dice games on the list than anything else. So let's see what happens on this list between numbers 80 and 70. So number 80 on the list is the game Raptor from Matago, from designers Bruno Cathala and Bruno Fedduti. This is a two-player head-to-head game where one player is playing as a mother raptor with some baby raptors, and the other player is playing as a bunch of scientists. And the scientists are trying to capture the baby raptors to take them off to the laboratory for testing. The mother raptor is trying to protect her babies, and so it's quite a nice emotive theme. You've got these nice little miniatures moving around the board, and the game is played really as card play. You're playing cards simultaneously, playing them face down, then revealing, and depending on the difference between the cards that you've played, you're going to get different types of actions. And obviously, as you're playing cards, you're running out of cards in your deck, so you're going to have to then try and find a way to refresh those cards in your hand to bring them back into your hand so that you can use those abilities again. The mother's trying to get the babies off the board, the scientists are trying to capture the babies, so it's a totally asymmetric style of play, and it's just a really neat competitive game with a really fun theme. So I highly recommend Raptor. Number 79 on the list is Dice Heist. This is another really fun dice game with a clever mechanism. It's so simple, this game. You either roll the dice to try and get 4 or more or 5 or more, depending on which of the different museums you're trying to go to. And they'll all be each museum, each turn will be amassing various different items that you might want to steal in order to do some set collection and score points. But you can either roll against one of those museums to try and beat the total, or you can basically pause and take a second dice. And so you can build up your pool of dice, and then eventually you're going to roll them and you've got much more chance of getting a result that beats one of those museums. But in doing that, in playing it safe, you're allowing the other players the opportunity to take the risky moves, roll the dice, and try and capture those things before you get a chance. And that's the whole thing, the whole game really. But it works really, really well. It's such a simple system. This game's totally overlooked. I don't know how easy it would be to get hold of. I think it's great. I think it could really do with another run, really. Another attempt at getting it out there with a slightly different approach, maybe a different publisher. I don't know, different art style. But it's a really good one. This is from Trevor Benjamin and Brett Gilbert, who are two designers that I know. I tend to go for particularly Trevor's games. I do really like a lot of Brett's games as well, but basically everything that Trevor puts out is fantastic. Trevor's the designer of the game Undaunted Normandy, which was really, really popular this year, Trevor and David Thompson. Number 78 on the list is Scythe. Now, Scythe is a game that I had avoided for several years, really, because it's not that I don't like the art style, I do. I think the art is really, really well done. It turns me off a little bit, this idea of these giant mechs, and it all looks very much like it's all about warfare and combat and things like that. It's quite sort of complex, the game. There's a lot going on. It's a massive board. It was extremely popular, so people were playing it all over the place, which meant that if I was going to dive into a game of it, I was likely to be playing with people who'd played it a lot. And so I would feel bad about, well, firstly, I'd have to learn the game, and then I was going to do badly. And so anyway, I put it off and put it off and put it off. But I really like what Jamie Stonemaier Games, I really like his approach. I really like the openness of how he talks about the industry. I like all of his vlogging and this sort of thing. I've had some contact with him. And so I like to follow what Stonemaier is doing. And obviously they've had huge success the last couple of years with Wingspan. So I revisited Scythe, and I found actually there was a lot that I really, really loved about it. It's not a game I'm hugely familiar with. It's not a game I've played a lot, but But I really appreciated the mechanisms, the way they go together, the just everything about it, and the aesthetic works really well. Number 77 is another Phil Walker Harding game from Cosmos. This one is Imhotep, which is a game where you are, again, like most of his games, it's really intuitive. You're selecting different blocks and then you're placing them in different ways, depending on the location that you're going to, in order to collect sets. And score points in a variety of different interesting ways, and you can switch up those ways by flipping over the tiles and have a bit of variety in the game. This one was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres one year, a couple of years ago, and it deserved it. You know, this is one of those classic, what we call gateway games, one of those games that anybody really could understand this game. It's really quite simple, but there's enough going on, and it's different enough to those mainstream games that it would, raise an eyebrow. People go, oh, okay, there's more to board games than I thought. I think Imhotep is a really good example of that style of game. Number 76 on the list is the game Tobago. So Tobago is a game from Zoch Verlag, a German publisher, and this one is one of the most beautiful board games. It's got these lovely palm trees and statues, and this whole island looks so sort of delicious. And essentially we're hunting for treasure, and we're trying to deduce where the treasure is. And in fact, what the players are doing is playing cards which dictate where the treasure might end up. So they say, right, the treasure is next to a tree, or it's within 2 spaces of a tree, or it's within 2 spaces of the coast, and so on. And so you gradually narrow down where this treasure is, and there's a bunch of different treasures that you want to find. Once it's been narrowed down to where it is, then you've got to get your jeep there before any of the other players and try and gather the treasure. That's essentially how the game works. And the deduction side of it is really nice. It's a strange deduction game because the treasure is not in any set position. We kind of dictate where it is by placing our cards, so it's kind of a reverse of the normal deduction stuff that you get. But it's really neat. The mechanisms in it are neat. And this game has been around for a few years, and you don't see it that often about. But then weirdly, last year a new expansion came out for it, which I haven't tried yet, but I'd really like to. So it sounds like there's still some love for this game, and that Zoch is still supporting this game. So hopefully we'll continue to see it over the next few years. But it's a really good one. If you like adventuring and deduction and racing to get to places, then this is a game for you. Number 75 on the list is the game Skylands. Skylands is a tile-laying game with a follow mechanism, so similar to games like Puerto Rico and San Juan, where if I take an action, then everybody takes that action, but I get a slightly better version of it. And we're placing tiles on our board, then we're placing meeples onto the tiles in order to build them up, to score points, to gather new tiles with special abilities on, and things like this. It's a pretty simple system. It's a big box game from Queen Games that came out a couple of years ago, and it's based on a Japanese, I believe, I think it was a Japanese game called King of Frontiers. For some reason this one went under the radar. I think it got a couple of sort of prominent, slightly negative reviews, which I didn't really agree with. I thought it was far better than the reviewers made it sound, and I wonder whether that's impacted on it, but you don't see it around all that much. In fact, I've seen it in some bargain bins recently, but I think it's great. I think it's really, really good. The production from Queen Games is, very much in the Avatar sort of vibe. I don't know how popular Avatar is these days. That's a few years old, isn't it? Maybe that wasn't the best theme to go for, or something like that, and it didn't help sales, but the game is absolutely solid. This is from the same designers as the game Little Town. If you've seen the game Little Town, not Tiny Towns, I'm talking about the yellow game Little Town that came out last year. So if you've seen that one, enjoyed that one, then I think Skylands is actually better. I think you'll enjoy Skylands as well. Number 74 is the game Takanoko. So Takanoko is just really cute. It's one of the cutest games that I've got. We've got this panda and a gardener, and no player controls either one of those. In fact, on your turn you can control one or the other, but you've got a bunch of objectives that you want to achieve. So you might want the bamboo that stacks up on these tiles to grow to a certain height in a certain color, in which case you're going to want to move the gardener. Or you might have an objective objective that says you want the panda to eat certain colours of bamboo, so you might want to move the panda around to eat those bits of bamboo. Or you might have an objective which says you've got to place a certain pattern of different coloured tiles, and so you're going to focus on that, building up those different areas of the garden. It's also pretty, the pastel colours, the stacking bamboo, everything like that. The gameplay is pretty simple, but it's not mindless. You know, there's enough decisions there to keep it interesting. This one stayed popular for, you know, I guess this came out probably, I'm not sure, 2012, something like that, 2011, 2012, and it's still popular today. It's got a good expansion, Takanoko Chibis, which is even more cute, baby pandas, and a girlfriend for the panda. It's really nice. I think Takanoko is a good next step after those initial sort of classic gateway games like Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne. Number 73 is Flashpoint Fire Rescue. Now, when I got Flashpoint Fire Rescue, quite a few years ago now, I got well into it. This was the first cooperative game that I really, really enjoyed. I got properly stuck in. I was buying up all the expansions and getting stuck into the different Kickstarters and so on, backing all of these Kickstarters. I liked all the different scenarios. Essentially, this is a co-op game similar to something like Pandemic. You know, I take my actions, use a bunch of action points, and then a load of bad stuff happens. Fire spreads through the house, and you're trying to decide, do I fight the fire or do I go and save the people that are stuck in the rooms and let the fire rage on? And you can buy expansions with, you know, 2-story buildings, massive skyscraper type buildings. There's an expansion that's on a submarine, on a ship. There's one on the train. I think there's one on a plane, maybe. I might be wrong about that, but there's a bunch of different expansions set in different locations, and that really changes it up and you know, adds to the fun. There's all sorts of different characters that you can use in the game. I raved about this game on my videos when this channel was new. I was talking a lot about all the different expansions and how much I enjoyed it all, and then the publisher contacted me and asked me if I'd like to be in the game. Well, that was exciting. So he created a card. I sent him a photo of myself, and he drew me into the game. So I am the veteran in the game, but it doesn't look anything like me. so nobody ever believes me when I tell them that I'm the veteran in the game, and it's because when I sent the photograph, I was an actor back in those days, and so I sent him one of my acting headshots. And the thing with an acting headshot is that you make yourself look much more handsome and young than you really are, because you're pretentious like that. So that's what I sent him, a shot of myself looking much more sort of brooding and young and handsome. And so as a result, the image doesn't look anything like me. So nobody believes me that I'm the veteran, but I am. I'm the veteran in Flashpoint Fire Rescue, and that's a claim to fame. And it's one of the reasons that I really, really love the game. What I like is that sometimes I'll have friends who are playing the game, and I'll suddenly get a message pop up on my phone saying, "Oh, look, I'm playing as you." People I haven't heard from for months and months and months, they'll suddenly pop up and say, "Look, I'm playing as you in the Flashpoint Fire Rescue." So at least somebody believes me that I'm the veteran. Number 72 is Camel Up from Pegasus Spiel. This makes the list because there aren't that many really good gambling games, and this is a gambling game where no money changes hands. I like that. I used to play a lot of poker when I was younger, and you know, exchanging money, and it was exciting. You know, I'm not really into that anymore. The macho sort of posturing and banter and all, I can't be bothered with it. So, but sitting down for an hour and playing a gambling game with no real stakes, where there's no money at stake, but it feels like you're betting on races. That's what Camel Up is. It feels like you're watching a horse race and you're betting on it, and you're trying to manipulate the camels as they race around this track. It's got really fun components. I've got the original edition, but there's I guess a nicer version. I think that's arguable, but there is a new version out. I like it with the expansion, the different modules that you can add in there from Camel Up Super Cup. You can play it with a large player count. It's just a fun time, just silly, fun, fairly random gambling game. And number 71 is another game from Zoch. This is Leg Los. This is one of those games that I suspect a lot of people won't have heard of. It's similar to, I think of it as being similar to the game Pictures that won the Spiel des Jahres recently. So Leg Los, you've got a bunch of different wooden pieces of different shapes, and then you've got a selection of different images, like cartoony images that are laid out in the centre of the table. And you have to, you're given a tile which tells you which of those images you want people to guess. And so you lay out your sticks and your discs and so on to try and sort of point the other players towards that thing. And when someone guesses it correctly, you move on to the next one. And you try and get through as many of them as you can before the timer runs out in order to score points. And that's essentially the entire game. But it is a fun party game. I really like that mechanism. It's the time pressure. Trying to guess all these different things from very limited information, trying to be a little bit creative about it, laughing at what other players have done. As you're using up these sticks and discs and things, then you're running out of them, so it gets harder and harder to make something that represents those other images. Yeah, it's a really fun game, Leg Los. So looking at how the list has changed, well, between 81 and 100, my favoured publishers were Rio Grande and Blue Orange, each with 2 games in the list in those 20 places. But now we've got another 10 games, and what's happened? Matago has pushed ahead, and Zoch, German publisher Zoch. And Rio Grande and Blue Orange have been pushed down a little bit, and Bombix has come up to meet them with 2 games in the 30 games that we've talked about so far. In terms of designers, Rainer Knizia was ahead with 2 games, but now Phil Walker-Harding and Bruno Catala have joined him at the top of the chart with 2 games each. Looking at themes, well, we were talking previously about anthropomorphic animals and ancient world being my favourite themes in the first 20 games, but now with 30 games in there, we see that fantasy is pushing ahead and natural disasters are making a show as well. So anthropomorphic animals still in the lead, but fantasy and ancient world coming up 2nd and 3rd place. In terms of game style, we had dice games were getting ahead, but there were a bunch of different types of games in the mix. But now with 30 games, we can see dice games are still ahead, but they're being met by tile-laying games. Area majority and time pressure next, and then network building, flicking, stock holding, party games, and games with action points. So lots of different types of games in the mix, dice games and tile laying games at the very front. Let's see what happens as we move on to the next video, which will be numbers 61 to 70.